Hello, coaches. This is Coach Wade Waldrup with Lawton High School. Today, I will be presenting for the Michigan High School Football Coach Association online clinics on defensive game planning and our game week flow. If you need to have any questions or you want to contact me for anything, you can email me at wwaldrup@Madawan Schools, or you can contact me on my cell phone at 269-330-9152. I do have a Twitter handle if you want to go out and see some of our stuff out there, and I do have a YouTube channel where I post our defensive system. Today, I'll be going over our defensive philosophy and core principles, what we expect of our coaches as far as time commitment, expectations, their responsibilities in the game planning process. We'll go over our weekend schedule, how we break down opponents' data, and how we prepare a scouting report. We'll also go over our game planning development, our practice philosophy and flow, and I will show you our defensive call sheet. We'll start off by talking about our core beliefs and philosophy at Lawton High School and of our defensive staff. I put this quote in here. I talk about this often. I've had this in for a while, from back when I was coordinating at Constantine and even at Madawan. And the quote just adds to methods. There may be a million and then some, but principles are few, and the man who grasps principles can successfully select his own methods. What we really mean by that is that, everything really works. It doesn't matter what system it is, whether it's a 3-4, if it's 4-3, if it's 4-2, if it's 3-3, if it's a hybrid defense like we run, that it all works as long as you believe in it, you have a staff that believes in it, you're committed to the process, and then at the same time, everything doesn't work. If you don't have those basic core beliefs, it doesn't matter what you want to run as far as methods. It's not going to work if you don't run it with some sort of fidelity. So I put that out there so that we understand that this is the way I do things, this is the way that we do things, and it could work for you. But the way that you do things at your school also can work. We just want to give you some insight on what we do, and maybe we can help you, even if it's on just one little small part of our process. Our defensive philosophy at Lawton is and the reason I put our philosophy in here is because it really does dictate the way we game plan. Your philosophy should dictate the process. The process shouldn't dictate the philosophy. So our philosophy is we want to be a really aggressive physical football. We're not so much trying to prevent what the offense wants to do as much as we want to dictate what the offense is going to do. We want our players to play on the balls of our feet. I know we all say that, but it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to instill in your defense and through your protocols and procedures fast football. We never want to react. We want to apply pressure. And our base defense based off that needs to be simple. It needs to be flexible. It needs to be adaptable to any situation, both in our game planning and in our personnel. We are a Division VII football team, and some of you in some of you small schools will really understand that, is that we need to be able to simply have some concepts in defense. If we need to move a kid, let's say from an inside to an outside linebacker, from an outside linebacker to a safety, our defense needs to be simple enough that we're adaptable to doing that, and that kids are also understanding through this game planning process what's happening at other positions. Maybe some larger schools don't have that problem as much, but we have a lot of two-way players, and one injured player out for a week can set off a chain of reactions out of our team, and we need to be able to be adaptable throughout the game week. We also want to be able to simply game plan for all personnel groupings and formations and adjust quickly in the game. So that's what our defense is really predicated on, is being able to do that throughout the week and be able to adjust in the game. So our defensive principles that I'm going to get into in a second, I don't think it's unusual. I don't think that it's something that I think when I put them out there, it's just a given that these 7 principles we have. You might have one less, you might have 1 or 2 more, but it's the principles I think we all, as defensive minds or defensive coaches, have. We just put it a certain way, and when we believe that's the way you play winning defense. And these values are the basis of everything we do. When we do anything, from the time we watch film, the way we game plan, the way we scout, the way we practice, it's the basis of everything we do. It's integrated in every step of our process during the season. These principles dictate how we run our preseason, how we scout, how we game plan, how we practice, and how we evaluate ourselves and our players. We're going to evaluate ourselves, the other team, and our own players based off of these 7 principles. And these 7 principles, and again, like I said, I think that we all feel this way. We might have different priorities. They might be shuffled around a little bit. You guys might have a little more. You might have a little bit less. But we think the 7 principles are stopping the run. It's our primary. It's the first thing we do. Was we're going to stop the run. We are going to protect the middle. So when I say we're going to protect the middle, that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. We are a spill defense, so we're going to protect the middle, and we're going to base our defense and our run fits off of that. We don't want people owning our A and B gap. When we say no explosive plays, we probably more, because we are such an aggressive team, we mean to limit explosive plays. And because we are so aggressive, it might not be in the way the kids play, but the way we game plan and the way that we scout. We're going to scout and give kids enough information, not too much information, but enough information that they know when the explosive plays are going to come. And when we want to limit that, we practice that way. We're going to deal with down and distance, those type of things, to limit those explosive plays. But because we are such an aggressive defense, at times at Lawton we can give up some explosive plays, but our goal is always to chase it down and make them snap the ball again. Tackling is a huge part. Again, everybody says that tackling's a big deal, but what are we doing in the game planning and the process and the run fits to set up kids to be able to tackle well? What are we doing in practice from a week-to-week basis? Turnovers are another key part of winning on defense for us. We stress it. We never joke about a kid missing an opportunity for a turnover in practice. If a kid has a chance to intercept the ball, we get on him if he drops that interception. If there's a chance, if the ball's on the ground, how fast we're reacting, how much urgency were we having in getting to that turnover. And then we stress third downs. There's nothing more deflating than having a third down situation where you've got them in 3rd and 7 to 3rd and 10 to 3rd and 15, and they get the first down. So we really stress third downs. And then last, red zone. We are going to put concepts within the game, and we're going to look at their concepts within the game where we stress the red zone. If we can make them kick a field goal, we think we've won that possession. So those are the 7 principles we have on defense. We want to point them out so that you understand some of the stuff as we go through this defensive game planning and structure of the practice week, that you understand where we're coming at. So I guess one thing I want to talk about is time commitment of coaches. When you're talking about game planning or you're talking about the practice week, I think it really is. I think you have to put it out there of what your expectations of or your assistant coaches and what you expect them to do. I think you need to be clear. I think you need to communicate. I think you need to let them know why you're doing things. So I really do think before we talk about game plan, we need to talk about the time commitment of coaches. I think anybody that's probably watching this, football is important to you. It's important to us. And because it's important to us and we've decided to be high school football coaches, that it's a commitment we are making. We're making a commitment to this program or this overarching thing that we're something that's bigger than us, but it's a commitment that comes after the commitments of our family, our full-time job, and our community, whatever that might mean to you. To me, that means community service and or going to church or whatever it might be. So with those things, if that commitment to football comes after those other commitments, then we've got to sacrifice personally to be excellent. And when I say sacrifice personally, this is what I'm talking. I guess this is what I'm talking about. That maybe a little bit of sleep. Maybe you're going to say, if you're in a game plan and scout well, you're going to have to give up some sleep on the weekends. I have a passion for golf, but I only golf like 4 times a year because during the summer I've committed to other things. But if you're going to be a football coach, and I think I expressed this in a way that's understanding and empathetic to my coaches, that your family and your full-time job and your community are more important than football. But if you've chose to go play golf or go fish or do something like that when you've had the opportunity to do the football stuff, um, then I don't know that we're committed to being excellent. And I think our coaches know that balance. I think that we've communicated. When you let coaches know that early on in the process, I think that they understand that. You know, I do I do our coaches meetings online here the last couple of years. We do it through Google Meet, and and if they want to do the work at home, that's fine. If they want to do the work, at the school, that's fine, as long as the work's being done and that we're meeting certain timelines. And I know that might sound hard, and it's actually, I mean it the opposite way. We understand that coaches have other things that are maybe a little more important, but that if we're going to commit to the team, then we're going to have to sacrifice some of the things that we want to do personally. For me, that means sleep. I give up a lot of sleep, and that's what the commitment means for me. And you'll see what I mean. So our weekend schedule. Um, what we want done ASAP is we want to get all films shared out to all team. Um, our My philosophy on film is this. Some people are very protective of their film. If another team wants all 9 of my games, if we're going into playoffs with them, I'll give them all 9 of our games. I have no problem with that. I was at Constantine, where we were a full house wing T team, and the way we thought about it was, if you want all 9 of our games and you're going to break down 232 traps, then go for it. You can have all of them. At the same in the same part of that process is we try to accumulate as many game films as we can. So I try to get all the game films before I've done anything with it shared out to the whole team, so guys can do with the film what they need to do with the film, whether it's kids watching the film, whether it's coaches watching the film. We do that as soon as possible. I try to get them all uploaded before anybody wakes up on Saturday. And with that, I try to make sure so that we're trying to make sure they're ordered and ODK'd by 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. And there's a reason for that. So it's quartered and ODK'd, and then by 6 p.m. Saturday, and I'll get into this in slides here in the future, I have to have a head coach's intent for the week posted. When I say posted, I mean out to all my coaches, and you'll understand what head coach's intent is. I think it's a little different what we do or what I do when it comes to game planning, but I try to get that head coach's intent posted by 6 p.m. by close of business Saturday. So whatever that might mean to your assistant coaches. And I don't ask my assistant coaches to do a ton with the breakdown, but I do ask them to do some. But I'm asking them to have everything they've been assigned for breakdown to be input to every single film we have. If we have 9 films, then I want their breakdown assignment filled in for all 9 films by close of business Saturday. By 8 a.m. Sunday, I will have went through and checked everything, and I want every single film completely broke down. I think there's 21 categories we break down, and we're expecting all 21 categories to be filled in by 8 o'clock. By noon Sunday, I want to have all the reports and scouting reports are done and out to the coaches, and I prepare that myself. By 4 o'clock Sunday, at 4 o'clock, we have our coaches meeting, and our coordinators have their initial game plan is ready. And we'll go into what that means from the defensive side in a minute. Then by 6 p.m. Sunday, we want to have our final game plan complete after we've met as a coaching staff and made any adjustments to that. Then by close of business Sunday, this is what I expect. I expect the game plan with the scouting report is out to all the players on a Google slide. I prepare the Google slide based off of what the coordinators and the position coaches have given me, and then I make sure that a hard copy is printed for every single coach and player and is sitting there for when we go into film on Monday. But the players will have access to a Google Slides of the same information out to them Sunday night. I try and do that by about 8 o'clock so the kids can look at it if they want that night before they go to bed. And then I expect my position group coaches to have created a small 5 to 10 playlist to share to their position groups. I don't share playlists to my players. The position group coaches do that. And then our practice plans for the week are done and out to coaches. So I make sure that all the practice plans, including what specific drills we're given, what we're going to do on specific days, very detailed, is out to the coaches by um, Sunday night. And then by 7 a.m. Tuesday morning, I want our offensive and defensive call sheets are done for the week, and our practice scripts are prepared for the entire week. And so when I say the entire week, I'm talking about Tuesday and Wednesday, which are our more full practices, and then for our defensive walkthrough on Thursday. So defensive breakdown assignments. So this is what we have our coaches do. And as you can see, when you look at it, it might have sounded like that was a big workload on position coaches when I went through it a minute ago. I am the defensive coordinator on the team, and I am the head coach. And I'm the safeties coach. And when I say safety coaches, I mean down safeties, outside linebackers, and free safety, as well as the defensive coordinator. So those three things kind of fall on me. So I make sure it's a quarter and ODK early Saturday morning. It's the first thing I do. I get up very early on Saturday morning, and I'll start to I really put in the quarter and ODK, and then I'll start doing what I have to do as a safeties coach. I'll put in the offensive strength, motion, and motion direction. And with each one of these breakdown groups that I've given different coaches, there's a reason why I've given those particular coaches those particular items. So the D-line coach, I have him put down the hash just because I have to have someone have the hash, and I put down the opposing. He puts in the opposing rusher, and then he'll have some sort of custom column I've given him that week, and it could vary depending on what the type of offense we're playing. The linebackers coach is going to get play, direction, gap, and result. Now, the reason I have him have play, direction, and gap is I want my inside linebacker coach to really understand which way the play direction's going based off of what hash they're on, if they're in a field or if they're in a boundary situation. And as they're going through their keys and reads, those things don't dictate the key and read. Play direction doesn't. But having a sense of what the play direction is when they're in certain formations and certain spots on the field really can give a kid a pre-snap idea of what's going to happen. And then gap really does have something to do with their key and their read and how they run fit. So I have him break those down. The corners coach is going to deal with the pass zone and opposing receiver, and I'll also have another custom column for him. If there's any other sort of custom column that I want done, I'll take that upon myself to do. And then as a defensive coordinator, I'm going to put in the play type, the down, the distance, the yard line, gain loss, offensive formation, and offensive play. And now so some of you are going to ask right now, Coach, do you use huddle assist? And I do not use huddle assist. Not that I think that there's anything wrong with huddle assist. I think that what it's used for might benefit some schools. Myself as a defensive coordinator, and not so much as a head coach. If I was just a head coach making the decision, I would just get huddle assist. But as a defensive coordinator, by putting in the data, I allow myself to watch film from an analytical point of view. I feel if I'm using huddle assist, I might not look at the film as many times as I would if I didn't have it, and I'm looking at it through a different lens. If I'm looking at it through a defensive coordinator position and then I'm putting in the play type and the down, I really am starting to get muscle memory of what they want to do. Does it take a long time? Yes, it takes a long time. Do I have to give up some sleep to do that? Yes, I do, especially if you're late in the season. But I get a very good sense as a defensive coordinator what they want to do, when they want to do it, the way the flow of the game goes from their aspect, and what they want to do. It allows me to not be so data driven on a Friday night calling defenses. I can at some point make some things just off of intuition because I have broken it down so much. I've watched the film and the plays over and over again because you've got to go back and forth to put a lot of this data in. Now, I don't ask my position coaches to do that as much, but by making them put in their own columns, they are going to get some muscle memory. They're going to be forced to watch film. They're going to get um, they're going to get it at a different point of view than if they were just looking at data and looking at what the statistics say. That is why I have my team actually break it down physically, and why I do not use huddle assist. It has nothing to do with money or anything like that. It just forces me to get very analytical and get deep into the film. This is what ours looks like every single week. I wanted to explain something on the screen. So as we get into the screen and you look at offensive formation, this offensive formation, the way I call things or the way I label things, has nothing to do with our offense. It doesn't matter what offense that they run. It's the way that it is universal. So as you look at the columns, you can see it's gun, ace, left. And all we're saying there is that they're in gun. They've got one back. He's to the left. He's to the right. And then we have a number assigned to everything. So 1 by 3 would mean that we have one receiver to the left. We've got 3 detached on the right-hand side. And so that's gun, ace, left, 1 by 3. If it was the opposite, gun, ace, right, let's say 3 by 1, we'd have 3 receivers to the left, 1 receiver to the right, as they look at it, not as we look at it from their point of view. And it gives us an idea, and it's very universal. It's easy to explain to the kids as they break down data. What are they looking at? It's better than calling something in our mind from a defensive standpoint. If I was an offensive coach, I'd be labeling things the way I want them labeled. But from a defensive standpoint, it doesn't matter what they run every single week or what concepts they're in. It's a very universal way of putting things. If they're a full house T team, then we would probably just call it T. But if you go down there a little ways, you can see gun, ace, left, 2W by 2. What does that mean? It means they're in gun. They've got one back. He's to the left. To the left-hand side, they've got 2 receivers. One of them happens to be a wing. And on the other side, they've got 2 detached receivers. It's the same thing if you went down a little ways and you saw gun, ace, right, 2 by 2W. So the things that we could put in there, we could put 2T for 2 with a tight end on one side. We could put 3T. They're in what we would call tripes. They're in trips left with a tight end being one of those receivers. You could go 3T by T. That's just the way we put it in. And because it's universal, it doesn't matter what teams run from week to week. I think kids would get confused once we got outside what we called our formations offensively. If we started to just name things, I think kids would get a little more confused. This just seemed to work out very well, and it's also very universal for coaches. If I get a new coach in, he might have learned something somewhere else. They can look at it just in 5 minutes. They understand the system and they can break it down that way. All right. So I talked a little bit about head coach's intent, and I think this is very important. I think this is something that's made a huge difference in different places I've been. So when we say head coach's intent, this is what we mean. This is really a military. I was in the Marine Corps for 9 years, and before you'd go on any mission or any exercise, you'd have a commander's intent. So that's where this idea comes from. So a head coach's intent is nothing more than just a basic, clear, concise statement of what our team must do and the conditions that must be established, as well as some general considerations that represent what our result will be that week. And if we lose and we achieved our desired result, then that team was just probably better than us. But if we can, in general state what we want to get done, we think it constitutes success for that game. And more than likely, if we really understand what I want as a head coach, then it's easy for the defense and offense and special teams coordinators really to then game plan in a certain way. And that's why I do it by 6 o'clock on Saturday. I want the different coordinators really to understand what we're trying to accomplish that week in that game. And here I'll give you a couple examples, and they're kind of very different examples. And I'm sure if the other coaches in my league looked at it, they probably would know who Team A is, and they would probably know who Team B is. But the first example is Team A is very talented at the skill possession, has the ability to score quickly from any. This week, we will need to limit their possessions and time of possession by aggressively pressuring on defense, using the clock offensively and taking calculated risk on special teams. So I'll just take that example first. When we're talking about my intent and how we're going to game plan. Obviously, this team is probably they're probably a high scoring team. They are probably very efficient on offense. They probably have some big play receivers and running backs. They are probably used to big plays. I put out there, they can score quickly from any spot on the field. And so, with that being said, the way I might, as a head coach, I got to think about what do we need to do to win against this team. Well, I want to try and limit their possessions, and I want to try and own the clock. I don't want to give them the ball for that much time, and I want to have long drives out of on my side of the ball. So I might aggressively pressure on defense. They're going to score quickly whether I'm pressuring or not pressuring. So what can I do to maybe make them make some mistakes, turn the ball over, or maybe have some incomplete passes, or maybe some tackles for loss on my part? I'm going to pressure on defense. I'm going to try and create that because they're big play anyways. It's going to be hard to bend and don't break with that type of team. I'm also going to use the clock offensively. I might use the 40-second clock and bring it down, towards the end of the play clock. I might try and run the ball a lot more that week. I might try and power them more that week. And I'm going to take some calculated risk on special teams. I might try and get a blocked punt. I might onside kick. I might fake punt. I might do one of a number of things. But I'm going to try and limit their possessions. So when I say, I didn't say all that in the head coach's intent. I don't want to dictate to the different coordinators specifically what I want them to do in the game plan. I want to give them leeway and autonomy to be able to come up with their own game plan without me micromanaging them. By doing that with that particular team, they understand what I want. I spent 2 sentences going over it. Here's another example. Team B will have a couple big playmakers, but they're prone to make mistakes on offense and lacks depth at defensive position. This week, we'll need to take advantage in field position as far as special teams and strategy, forcing them to use many plays to drive the length of the field. Offensively, we need to isolate weak points for big plays, and defensively, we need to be more conservative as far as pressures and coverages. Obviously, this team is prone to mistakes. If I can get them starting their drives at the 20 and I can make them just keep snapping the ball, odds are, if you really look at the percentages, they're probably going to turn it over, or they're going to have some sort of mistake with driving the field. So, like I said, by doing this with each coordinator, each coordinator feels like they own their part of the game. They aren't having me look over or dictate what I want them to do. They understand how I want them to call the game. They have the understanding of what we want to do and what we're trying to accomplish that day. The position coaches then get the same type of intent from the coordinator. The linebacker coach probably knows that he needs to work more on run fits and pressures if we're going to try and make a team drive the field. He needs to work more on pressures than he needs to work on run fits if we're going to do a bunch of pressures, because we're trying to get a team to turn over because they have the chance to score every single time they snap the ball. I want to give every single guy within the program autonomy to own their portion of the game. I don't want to make micromanage. And what this allows us to do, it allows them to trust me as a head coach, and it allows me to trust them as coordinators and position coaches. So data reports and scouting reports. So data reports, our number one rule is if you're creating reports, doesn't matter if you're a position coach, coordinator, if it's me, if I produced it and I looked at it and I felt like it had some value to me, then I'm going to share it with everybody. Even as a defensive coach, I'm going to share it with the offensive coaches. They might be able to see something just by glancing at it and understand something of what the other team's trying to do offensively that I might not understand defensively without spending a lot of time. So if I produce it and I keep it, I'm going to share it, and everybody's going to get it within the coaching staff. We produce the basic reports that everybody does, the huddle, just the basic huddle reports. And then we have custom reports that vary from week to week. I could go all day in different types of custom reports we have, but obviously what we need for a full house team is way different than what we would need for a 10 personnel shotgun team. But we do produce a number of reports, but as long as we adhere to the first rule I think that we're producing good reports that everyone can use. Our scouting report. So our scouting report will include the position, the year, the height, the weight, stats, and a basic description. Um, I try and create the scouting report somewhat on personnel just to help the coordinators. I, as defensive coordinator, obviously I'm looking at offense. If I can help the offensive guy before he has to get into this and list some of that stuff, also I do that. Basic description, I might call the different position coaches. Hey, what is their right guard like? And the defensive line coach, hopefully he can give me some sort of basic description on the kid. Oh, he's tough minded, he's gritty, coach, he's nasty. He's gonna give you a little shot after. We can't react to him. We want to put that in the scouting report so the kids see it. If they read it, they know it. We can then look at it from a logical standpoint as players and not and then be able to attack them in different ways if we have a basic description of what they can do. I would hate for a kid to go into a game that's been able to physically dominate kids and has been stronger than everybody. He's going to go against a very, very strong guy and think that that's prepare all week as though he's going to just physically dominate a kid again. When I could have just given a basic description on Sunday saying, hey, this kid, we're going to have to use more speed than power. We're going to have all the formations listed with tendencies out of both, whether that be run, pass, play direction, field boundary, whatever it might be. We're going to have a top 3 plays in each concept. We're going to have red zone concepts in there, and we're going to have third down go-to plays and players. That'll all be within our scouting report and the data reports that we produce. So the defensive coordinator's game plan. The initial game plan that defensive coordinator, and I happen to be the defensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator has somewhat of the exact same thing that he has to bring to the table. For the offensive side, the initial game plan includes the depth chart for us, our depth chart. Who are we using this week? What's the reason for it? Here's the depth chart as we go in. We might have an injury or something. We need to talk about it, but it should be the first thing, his idea of what he wants to do. And he brings it to the table so we have an understanding of what he wants, and the offensive coordinator does the same, and then we can make adjustments off of that. Maybe we can't necessarily use a kid as a starter if on offensively he's too big of a part of the offensive game plan and we want to save him on that offensive side. I don't know what the different things we could deal with on the depth chart, but we bring the depth chart. It's the first thing we talk about, and we make adjustments because it might affect every single other thing in the game plan. And then we talk about personnel groupings. What personnel groupings we plan on using that week, what personnel groupings they bring to the play to play. For example, if we play a team that gets in gun sometimes and then they get in T in other times and they're going to bring in different personnel groups, we want to know that in the game plan. And then we want to know what they do, what different types of concepts they have, what is the things they do, and then what we have within that addresses what they do. In our defense, we have something in our toolbox that can address every other thing that another team does. The defensive coordinator also has to come in and for the keys and reads for each position group. Now, this does not vary a ton from week to week. So, in other words, if I'm playing a 21 personnel group this week, the keys and reads are probably very similar to the last 21 personnel group that we played. But they might be different, and we're not going to go through assumptions on that. We need to know what the keys and reads are. And then general calls and plays we want to use in each front this week to attack what they do. We then, after we've gone through that, we then take a look at their personnel considerations and our personnel considerations, and we tweak every single part of that. For example, maybe we've got a really good front against their power scheme, but they've got a tight end that's an all-state tight end. Maybe we've got to attack and fit that a little different. Maybe we've got to just take for granted he might own our defensive end a little bit. We might want to shade alignments a little different things we want to talk about. We want to round table that within. And then the last thing we want to do with the tweaking is what we call red teaming. Our offensive coaches are then going to try and shoot holes through the defensive game plan. We all understand that that's going to happen. We try not, sometimes we do take personal, but we want to really try to initiate and encourage that type of analysis and looking at things tightly, and they really do come in knowing what the other team does, and they're going to say, okay, if we do, it's going to be some chalk talk going back and forth on what happens. Then the final game plan, after we get all that done on Sunday, the final game plan, and this goes out to everybody. Every single player, every single coach gets this. The final game plan will include the head coach's intent. Some of you guys might think that's weird. Why would a kid need to know that? If a kid understands that we're going to try and slow it up one week because the other team, and why we're going to do that, and how we're going to attack that, I think a kid becomes confident. He understands, hey, the coach has a plan for this. We know what we're trying to do. We have an understanding of how I fit into this game plan. Then we're going to give them a scouting report. We're going to give them each one of the coordinators' game plan, and then we're going to give them in that game plan the whole game week schedule from the second they walk into school on Monday all the way through the end on Friday. We're going to include the practice times, even though they're almost always the same, meal times, when the bus is leaving, when we plan the bus arriving, what time, how we're going to leave the locker room for, if we're at home or away, any meetings we might need to put in, anything that's going on in school that might affect us. We want to put in the JV game time and location. Is it at home? Do I expect the varsity to go to that if it's at home? If it's on the road, hey, if you want to go, this is how we're going to do it. All of that's going to be in there. And then our walkthrough times. We list in detail exactly on Monday when they walk in. They know exactly what's going to happen on Friday from the second they leave school all the way through the time that the game starts. Okay, so I know I am going pretty fast, but our game week, the defensive flow. So I'm going to take a little bit of time on this, not too much, but a little bit of time so that you understand the way we run our practice week. Taking into consideration all those game plans, the head coach's intent, the sessions we have do not vary a ton, but what we do inside the sessions can be way different from week to week. For example, if we're playing a flex bone triple option team, all of our sessions are going to be different in detail on what we do in them. So we watch film on Monday, and when we come out to practice, after we've warmed up, as soon as specials is done, we go into defense. We do defense the same. We are not a team that has a defensive day and an offensive day. We have the same amount of time for offense and defense every single day. So on Monday, after we get done with specials, and we do specials every single day, we spend a lot of time on specials. As soon as specials are done, we do pursuit drill, a pursuit drill that we do that's probably very similar to everybody else's pursuit drill in our team funding time. And then we're going to do position fundamentals. In some teams come out in just helmets on Monday. We come out in shells for this one reason, really this one reason only. We want the coaches to be able to run whatever position fundamentals they have. Something that has nothing to do with that particular game week. It's just the fundamentals they think that the kids need to work on. We do that on Monday, and it's a large block of time on Monday that they get position fundamentals. We don't have any group time on Monday. And then in team time, we go through recognition and we do option responsibilities. Now, when we say option responsibilities, so this is just my philosophy as my defensive philosophy. We treat everything from an option viewpoint. What are your responsibilities on either or plays? Whether that's read option, whether that's zone option, whether that's triple option, whether that's dive option. We're going to go over option responsibilities. We even attack wing T, power trap, keep schemes like it's option. You're still going to have responsibilities. And we go over, so we have recognition of what the other team does. And then the last thing, we spend about 5 minutes at the end of defensive practice saying, okay, this is if the ball is coming to your side, here's your responsibilities on option. And it could be speed option, it could be any type of option, but we're going to go over option responsibilities every single week in practice on Monday. Mostly it's a review for the kids, but we want to make sure we touch on it because we don't necessarily want to have to reinforce that all week. We're going to look to just give feedback on that. Tuesday, we have a tackling circuit. Then we have keys and reads in Indy. keys and reads for every single player. Then we have our inside run and pass skelly. The way we do it is JV goes to pass skelly first, varsity goes to inside run. So the receivers that are varsity are running scout versus the JV kids, and the JV kids that are inside run guys, inside linebackers, and D linemen, they're running scout, inside run versus the varsity. Then we flip it so that our linebackers can get both sides. But our inside linebackers, outside linebackers go from inside run over to pass skelly, and the JV kids come over to inside run. And then on Tuesday, we go over our bread and butter. What are their top plays? What are our primary fronts? And what are our primary coverages that week? And we drill that in team time. It's probably the tempo of it goes a little slower from a defensive standpoint on Tuesday. We still do a lot of that stuff on Wednesday, but it goes much faster. Then on Wednesday, again, we're in full pads. We do a turnover circuit, followed by third down drills, followed by inside run and pass skelly, same thing as on Tuesday. But we're going to go over in team. We're going to talk about third down. We're going to have a third down session. We're going to then start putting in some of our pressures. We're going to start rolling to our secondary fronts and coverages also. And then Thursday, we do game rehearsal and red zone. Before we get into our walkthrough practice on Thursday, we will take the defense, go down and run red zone, then we'll flip to our offense and we'll put in our red zone and their red zone concepts for that week. And then we go back and we rehearse every part of Friday night, starting with calisthenics and all of that. How they run out on the field, we go through all of that in detail. So that brings us to our teaching philosophy in practice. We believe as a coaching staff, and we've talked about this a number of times, that there's three aspects of all good coaches when it comes to teaching. I mean, I'm talking about the actual coaching of football on the field, and we try to apply these aspects in all phases of our program. And those three aspects are competency, uplifting, positive energy, and belief. So by competency, we just mean a coach must be knowledgeable and prepared. You got to put in your work in the off season. You got to know your schemes. You got to know your drills. You should come in and you should be able to just do that without even looking at a piece of paper, and you're capable of what you've been assigned to do. That's why I give coaching assignments within probably a couple weeks of the end of the season. Hey, this next year I might go to my, for example, I took my JV coaches and the varsity coaches, they all coach together. My JV defense coordinator, he wants to be a head coach someday. So I'm trying to give him as much different responsibility, a wide range of things. He was the D-line coach, but he played linebacker in high school. So I made him the inside linebacker. I told him that with the next, he was able to do all of his research from the very beginning. It gives him a large period of time to do that instead of just having to try and hammer it in through the summer. Uplifting, positive energy. We believe that the coach must build the positive attitudes on the field, and it's got to be a reflection of him and his leadership. That he's got to have enthusiasm. One of the things we always say is we never talk about what a kid did wrong, but what he has to do right. We might point out how he didn't do something right, but we're need to do next time, whether it be in scheme, whether it be in read, whether it be in mistake, whether it be in fumble. Doesn't matter what it is. We're going to talk in future tense. It's always positive, never negative. I've had to get on coaches at times when they start to really get on a kid and they talk about, his desire or his ability. I have to tell the coach, no, we're not going to do that. If the kid doesn't have the ability to do what we're asking to do, then we need not to ask him to do that, which leads us to the last point, belief. A coach must believe in the player's abilities and believe in accomplishing the team goals. Whatever we put in the game plan, the kids better be able to do it. I mean, if they can't do it, if it's above them or they're going to have to play a perfect game, then it shouldn't have been in the game plan. Shouldn't be in the scheme. Shouldn't be the type of defense we're running. So we always want to have belief. And then if we're giving kids things they can do, and yes, we do want to push the ceiling on a little bit, but if we're giving kids the things that they can do as far as their football knowledge and their talent and their skills, then I think that we go in and we're never discouraged as coaches. Then that positive, uplifting energy happens, and we're more confident on what we can teach. All three of these things are very interrelated. in our teaching philosophy of what we want kids to do from a week to week or from a day-to-day basis within the practices. Um, One of the last things I'll cover is practice Blue Devil way. I think it's really important, and I talk about this because when we do game planning, um, I think this is a big part of it. We say everybody is all in. We try and really express to the kids when we make them actually. There's a tap in sign. It says all in on it, and there's got a the Lawton logo on it, and the kids tap in. Our practice field is all fenced in, and before the kids can walk in that fenced in area, they're going to tap in, and that tapping in symbolizes that they're leaving the other aspects of their life outside that field. We want them to come in. They're all in that period of time. This is the time for them to escape the pressures of school, maybe family issues they're having, the girlfriend problem they're having, the work issues they're having. When they're in that practice, we have them tap in. They're all in. That's all that within that fence. That's all it's about. Everything is precisely choreographed. When I go through the game plan, the practice plan from week to week, it is very, very similar from day to day, but it is precisely choreographed. As the kids are going through calisthenics on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, my expectation is that the position coaches are getting the things they're going to need for the whole practice ready to go. It's very choreographed, and the way we run practice, so everything is ready to go in the different spots. And when you do that, we're not wasting time. We only practice from 3:10 to 5:25. I don't want kids to be at practice the whole time. But to do that, then we've got to make it very efficient and very streamlined. So everything is very precisely choreographed. We expect the coaches to be jacked up. We want to be excited when we're out on the field. If we're excited to be out on the field and we can give them that atmosphere, then the kids are going to have energy, and practice is just going to be better. Everybody is all out. We're a tempo team. We practice like we're going against tempo teams. And we expect kids to run every single where we go, every single spot on the field at all times. They are never walking anywhere from place to place. Again, we coach in the future tense. We talk about what they can do right, not what they can do wrong. We have music out there, both for energy and for distraction. We want it loud. We have loud music. We let our captains pick the playlist. We let coaches pick the playlist at time. And then we have what's called the 10-80-10 rule. The coach should not be talking at the beginning more than about 10%. Show them what to do. Have the kids do it for about 80% of the time, and then use 10% of the time for feedback. For example, in team, we tell the coaches they cannot be stopped in front of a player correcting them. You've got to be walking in towards the play after the play has been whistled. Tell the kids with a few buzzwords. We don't do synonyms. Everybody does. We all use the same language. Give them the buzzwords. Get back out. Let's run the next play. We want things to go fast. We don't want kids bored. We want all kids moving. And then what we have is called only halo. We have a halo drill that's a conditioning drill, but it's more about team bonding. We don't condition. Because of all this other stuff that we're doing fast, we don't ever condition. We feel like our practice is conditioned. We feel like we've got a 2-hour conditioning session that is our practice. So we do a thing on Wednesdays. It's called Halo, but that is the only time we condition, and it's more about team bonding than it is actually about conditioning. And then we compete. We're measuring everything in all aspects of a practice. We want to compete. We're letting you know if you won or lost on every single play in every single drill. Compete. Last thing I'll show you before I sign off here is our defensive call sheet. I said that this had to be done by Tuesday at 7 o'clock. We want our game called for us prior to Friday night. So we have it down. We have what they do down and distance on the left-hand side, down and distance in 4 different field zones. This would be on their side of the field. So from their 1 to their 29, their 30 to 50, we break everything down in detail, and we're going to call calls based off of their tendencies, and we're going to have 3 different choices in there. As you can see, I've got my front called, my movement called, my pressure called, and we have that 3 different sets, and I have a primary and a secondary coverage. We just do it that way. We feel like if we do that way, about anybody could pick up the call sheet and call on defensive nights. The guys up in the box have this. They're communicating. They're charting. If things start to go drastically different off the call sheet, they're letting us know that we probably have to get off the call sheet. But we do have this for every single person. I don't think it's drastically different from anybody else. And then we use this information over to the right for any sort of extra information. And as you can see, we do have tendencies for every single down and distance for the whole field. So I just want to thank the Michigan High School Football Coaches Association for having me do this clinic. I appreciate them having me out. They do so much for us. This is a difficult time, and just the being proactive on the rules and the things we want to do and the way they're communicating us and letting us know what we need to do as coaches is much appreciated. So again, if you have any questions, refer back to the video, and I'll be more than welcome to handle that anytime. Have a great day, guys.